everyone, and welcome back to the F2 show by Inside F2. A bit of a gap in the calendar between Monaco and Barcelona, so we thought we'd do a bit of fill-in by discussing our favourite topic, the Formula 2, Formula 1 driver market. Aron Harper and Chris McCarthy with me to discuss a topic that's on everyone's lips, not just in the Formula 2 paddock, but in the Formula 1 paddock as well, wouldn't it, chaps? And could be a juicy conversation, Aron.
Yeah, there's so many ways this conversation could turn out, so many rabbit holes we could get down in terms of a driver's future or potentially non-future with Formula One teams. Lots to discuss, and I think it's going to create, maybe I won't say conflict here, but it will certainly create conversation between us and hopefully in the comments as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We want to hear your comments as we go through. Aron, I thought, you know what? There's a guy who's been watching some of these drivers all the way through the ranks. He's commentated on them. So I thought, you know what? Let's get Chris McCarthy in, because everything he says is going to be 100% correct. Is that right, Chris?
Well, let's see. No, thanks for having me on the show, mate. Always great to come on. I love tracking the guys. Love. It's been a pleasure to watch Formula 2 this year. What a championship it's been so far. I think it's fair to say. Full of surprises. And I think the driver market in F2 is as good as it's been for a few years. The drivers, both that have in alumni and current drivers, have been more in the market now than they ever have been. So I think and the F1 market is going absolutely bonkers right now, isn't it? Everyone seems to be rushing to fill the seats. So I think this is the perfect time to have this chat.
Absolutely, I agree. Right, how this is going to work then? So I'm going to say some names. You guys are going to rank them and their likeliness to make it to Formula 1 for 2025. 10 being it's a done deal, signed, sealed, delivered. 0 being absolutely no chance, amigos. So, and I want you guys, as we said, you guys at home to let us know in the comments your thoughts as well. What do you think? Well, you can score them out of 10 as well. What's their likelihood of making it to Formula 1 in 2025? And we're going to kick off with Aron, your boy, your favourite driver in Formula 2, Oliver Bearman. And we'll come to you first for that one. What do you think Ollie Bearman's chances of being in Formula 1 in 2025 are?
I've rated it a 9.9 out of 10. It's almost certainly a done deal that he's going to Haas. I mean, it would the only way he would not go to Haas is if something really, really, really terrible happened to Charles Leclerc. And then they were like, okay, we'll just have 2 British drivers at Ferrari next season. It will be fine. Although they probably then try and recycle Carlos Sainz, to be fair. But honestly, we don't want anything bad to happen to Charles. I think Oliver Bearman will be in the Haas next season. It makes sense. He's shown he's got what it takes to be a Formula 1 driver. He's got that speed. He's not had the results right now in Formula 2 to back it up, but I think his season has been, I won't say destabilised, but it's been a bit up and down because of what happened in Jeddah. I think he obviously got thrown into that environment. It's taken a little bit of time for him to readjust, perhaps, to driving the Formula 2 car. Bear in mind, it's a new Formula 2 car as well. They're all still trying to get their head around it and set it up appropriately. So there's been a bit more for him to, in terms of his challenge, in terms of his adaptation, but he's getting the handle on things. And Ferrari have all the data that they could possibly need. He showed he was possibly almost ready last year in the FP1 sessions he did with Haas. So the ones he's doing this year, the 6 he's doing this season, are more just about him getting to know the team, I suppose, and bedding himself in, getting to know the engineers, and kind of getting a peek behind the curtain for what's in store with their 25 car, because their 24 car has been better than anticipated. They said it would be at the back. It's kind of been in the middle. So, that's pretty good going. And if they can continue that trajectory, they could be on the podium next year.
Just as Nico Hulkenberg leaves, that would be typical, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Chris, Aron says 9.9. What's your score for Ollie Bearman being in Formula 1 next year?
It's hard to disagree with that, isn't it? It really is. 9.5 would be the minimum you could score that. He got given that perfect opportunity to audition, so to speak, at Jeddah, and he took it with both hands, putting in a good result. He still stands, what is it? I think 12th or something like that in the F1 driver standings. I think he's higher in the F1 standings than he is in the F2 standings, isn't he? Just about, which is absolutely crazy. And if it weren't for that, if it weren't for the fact that he took pole position there at Jeddah, if it weren't for the fact that his wheel came off at Imola in the pit lane, if it weren't him actually, it was he had a bit of that was Amory Cordial, wasn't it? If it weren't Imola, didn't go so well for him. If it weren't Monaco, where Zach O'Sullivan just trumped everyone with his strategy, if it weren't for those things, then he would be a lot higher than 13th in the championship. So yeah, Ollie Bearman, he would be a lot higher than 13th had he had that pole position and had things strategy-wise gone a bit better for him at Monaco. But overall, he needed to get some good points on the board. He's done that now in the last 2 rounds. And with that, I think it's going to be all but signed for him at Haas, because he had that chance to go and audition. So I think he owes Carlos Sainz a beer for that one.
I think is the bigger question more who Oliver Bearman's teammate at Haas is going to be, because obviously Hulkenberg's out the door, and I know this is straying away from Formula 2 a little bit, but Kevin Magnussen's not a done deal. He might not even do every race this season in Formula 1, so Bearman might get another chance in F1. Chris, who would you put alongside Oliver Bearman next season at Haas?
At Haas? That's a good question.
There's a certain Alpine driver who's just come on the market, isn't there? And Esteban Ocon will be a great benchmark for Ollie Bearman in his rookie season, right?
He would be, actually. And he's going to be looking for a seat pretty quickly. There might be a driver that's going to be looking for a seat as well. We'll
come on to that.
Who won't want to leave the F1, who's quite clearly doesn't want to leave F1, who would have been accepted with open arms, I think, over the other side of the pond and in Le Mans. So both of those drivers will be accepted into other championships very clearly, but I think that seat would become up for grabs, and they'll want someone to partner Ollie Bearman. So someone like an Ocon would be great. And then if the Williams seat, which apparently now is all signed into the hands of Carlos Sainz, and Valtteri Bottas might be looking for a seat there as well. So even he could be someone that they look at, because it looks like Williams are now all but signed, and that news breaking today as we record this, that's going to be announced before Spain. It looks like James Vowles I know we're moving off F2, but has got some really, really good drivers for that season.
Yeah, what a signing that would be for Williams. And let's move it on then. We've just spoken about Esteban Ocon obviously leaving Alpine, and that brings us on nicely to our next Formula 2 driver, Victor Martins. He's an Alpine Academy driver. He's had a really difficult start to the season, isn't he? Let's come to you first for this, Chris. Your scores out of 10. Will Victor Martins be in Formula 1 next season?
Oh, that's a really tough question, isn't it? Because at the start of the season, I would have rated that like a 7 or an 8, and now that's like a 4 or a 5. I mean, when you look at his CV, it's one of the most impressive on the grid. I mean, he was a karting world champion after like 2 years. I remember watching that in 2018. I think it was, maybe it was slightly earlier, 2016. And then he won. I remember watching him in Formula 1 Euro Cup back in 2019. I think he was racing the likes of Oscar Piastri during that season, and then went on to win Formula 3. Then went on to become, the best rookie in Formula 2. His career absolutely fantastic, and it all aligned. He was winning a championship every other season, and the stars looked aligned that if that pattern was going to follow. A first and a fifth, I think he was doing kind of every other season, that he was going to go and add to all these titles and go and win F2 this year. But ART, it just hasn't worked out for them. Of course, they had that blinder with Zach O'Sullivan, but it just doesn't seem to be working out for him. And has the boat now been missed with Jack Doohan jumping in the car at Canada? That for me all but confirms that he's going to take that seat at
interesting.
Alpine. And I think that for me, all but confirms that maybe Victor Martins is going to be left for the bench. However, I did put this out on Twitter as well. There's a triple header coming up, and there's a chance for a lot of points there. I score this a 4 or a 5 for now. What Victor Martin's there, if that seat isn't signed with a triple header, it's been proven by Zach O'Sullivan. He took a feature race win. He climbed, I think he's 40 points back now in the championship race, which is not a lot at all. Jack Doohan in his title, when he finished third, he was way out the hunt that season. In a triple header, if you go and get 3 podiums like Isaac Hadjar's just done, you can go from the back of the grid right to the front very quickly. So who knows? If he does that, if the pen hasn't been put to paper, he has a chance to just halt proceedings slightly, maybe because of his CV and the fact he's been with Alpine since 2018, and they've got a lot of faith in him clearly. So who knows? But I think that Canada FP1 is maybe Alpine looking to move this forward.
Yeah, I think Doohan is very, very likely to get that second Alpine seat. There's been talk of Zhou Guanyu being potentially looked at. I suppose the Renault parent company are trying to, because they've got all those celebrity investors as well, they're trying to minimize the amount that they are actually spending. It's a really bizarre business model, and Zhou coming in would bring some backing with the Chinese market. But honestly, if Alpine don't promote Doohan, there is literally no point in them having a junior driver program. And I feel for Victor Martins, because last year at points he showed he's got fantastic pace, fantastic ability, but there are also times where you thought there's still some rough edges to really smooth out. And he's just been, I think he would use this phrase, it's been awful for him this season. He's not scored anything higher than 4 points in a single race this season. It's been utterly demoralising for him. 11 points from the first, 5 rounds? That is not what he was expecting at the start of 2024.
It's not what we were expecting either, right?
No, it's been absolutely bizarre. Like, the 2 people we were probably going, those 2 will be at the top, locking horns, scrapping it out. This is going to be a title battle for the F2 ages. And they're absolutely nowhere. But Chris, you're absolutely right. A few good results and the whole thing turns around. One good qualifying session at Spain or Spielberg, and anybody's season can transform, because you get a podium in the sprint, you get a podium in the feature race. Suddenly, you're full of confidence again. You rediscover that winning touch. The team nail the setup for the following round, and you're just on it and you're riding that crest of momentum. And that Formula 2 is very much a momentum series. If you've got it, you want to keep it. If you haven't got it, you need to find it quick.
Yeah. I agree with Aron, though. It is a case of Doohan's done his time on the bench now, and this would be the right time for him to step up. He's appeared a lot on the broadcasting side. He's kept himself in the paddock, and he's kind of waited for his turn and done the testing. So this would be the right time for them to use their academy. He's been there for 2 years now, and put him in the car. He's done his time in the car. For Victor Martins, his confidence is shattered right now. So for him, if his season does turn around, then maybe he could do what they're doing with Jack Doohan and sit on the bench for a season, and who knows, maybe Pierre Gasly might get might look to move to another team at that point, and he could have his turn. But yeah, it's all about timing, isn't it? Formula 2, and it just hasn't worked out for him so far.
100%, and that leads nicely into a driver who has hit the series at the right time with a certain Lewis Hamilton moving on, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Aron, is he going to be in a Mercedes in 2025?
I've got this as a 9 out of 10 because, Toto Wolff wouldn't have spoken about it as much as he has if he had no intention of putting him in the car.
Yeah.
That's just not how he does things. Obviously, losing a multiple world champion in Lewis Hamilton, all those race wins, all that experience is going to hurt the team. But also, Mercedes are in a strange period at the moment where they're kind of regrouping. They were hoping that they would fix the car this year and it would be a race winner again. It's not. So they're kind of preparing for the 2026 regulations now, which actually on the day of recording have been kind of semi-released. We've seen some previous shots of the cars and they look pretty good actually. So I think a year bedding Antonelli in next season. There's, Chris, you say that the Williams seats are now filled. There's no point putting him in there anyway because You'd just have to come to Mercedes in 26 and
Yeah.
know everybody.
And get used to the team again. And I completely agree. It feels like Williams right now need an experienced pair of hands to drive them forward. Whereas for Mercedes, it's potentially the right time to put a junior in and to grow with the team in 25, ready for 26. It almost feels like Mercedes is the better option than Williams, ironically.
Yes, it's bizarre, isn't it?
Really odd. Chris, what do you reckon? Aron's got 9 out of 10.
Yeah, 8 out of 10 for me. But very high score. I think Andrea Kimi Antonelli will. Yeah, it's all but likely he's going to go to Mercedes next year. I doubt. I mean, the only other option is that they put him in a reserve role, like we saw what happened with Oscar Piastri in some form, that he kind of sits on the bench, so to speak. But I don't really see that happening. I think they've been very impressed with what they've seen from him, and a lot of people have kind of said, well, where's all this coming from? This 5-time champion, we haven't seen anything from him. He stepped up from a Frecker car into F2 and he's outperformed Ollie Bearman on a number of occasions, which is very impressive. He's got a string of 4th places. He hasn't quite got that podium yet, but he's come very close. And I think one thing has been very impressive from him is his consistency. He had that kind of one-off, didn't he, at Australia, which was quite unfortunate. But he's been to tracks mostly he's never really been to before. Frecker never really have gone to all these tracks. I think only Imola is the only one he went to, and he always had bad luck at Imola in his home race. So now he's about to go to a triple header of tracks he's really used to, and I think that's where you're going to start to see him. And once Kimi Antonelli starts winning, you can't really stop him. And I think once he gets a podium, we'll really see what he can do. Funnily enough, like you mentioned with Mercedes, they're not really in a position right now with winning titles, winning races to be bold enough to say, right, we want a championship-winning driver. They're kind of in a position where they can take a punt on a young driver and bring them in ready for these 2026 regulations, which look fantastic, by the way. Close racing, and he's all for that. He's a championship-winning driver. Having watched him for a number of years as well, I think he is going to be, he's like a world championship winning driver, and I think we'll see that from him one day. So, yeah, they've got a lot of faith in him, and I think they're ready to put that in him straight away.
I completely agree, and I think you're right. As soon as he gets a podium, that's it. He will be off. Only 3 drivers have got a better average qualifying than him this year, by the way. Isaac Hadjar, Dennis Hauger, and Bortoletto. 4th at best average qualifying in Formula 2. Bearing in mind the car was a bus in Bahrain, wasn't it? And it's 4 rounds essentially that he's smashed that. And I think the hatred for Kimi Antonelli, people were expecting him to jump straight from Frecker and be winning races by 40 seconds in Formula 2 is completely uncalled for. He's growing into the season, isn't he? And as you say, Chris, we're now going to races where he knows the circuits, Barcelona next out. And as you say, once he's on the podium, I think that'll be it. He'll be off by that point. Right? He won't look back.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And if Mercedes don't put him in as well, he will become, the money will go for him. I tell you that. It will be a repeat of Oscar Piastri, the likes of Ferrari and so on. I know they've just signed Hamilton, but even Hamilton said you have to put him in the car next year. So if they don't put him in, I tell you what, the offers will come flooding in for him because people know how talented he is. We've never really seen people win that many titles. If he won Formula 2 this year, he'd be unbeaten, which we've never seen before. He's beaten 170 drivers, which is outstanding. So yeah, I think this is a generational talent.
Oh, what a stat that is! Beating 170 drivers.
I had to do this for F1 TV. Yeah, so yeah, go crazy.
There's a reason we got Chris McCarthy on the podcast. There it is.
yeah.
Okay, moving on then. Isaac Hadjar. Now, obviously, had a great start to the season in Formula 2. And I wanted to put this in because I think this is a really interesting conversation, actually. Obviously, Sergio Perez has just signed a new 2-year deal at Red Bull. That means that really, for me, that spells the end of Daniel Ricciardo ever getting a Red Bull drive. So is he willing to sit in an RB for the next couple of years Well, I don't see the point in him sitting in an RB other than it's a Formula 1 drive. I don't really think he's going anywhere there. Yuki Tsunoda, could he be tempted by... I mean, that also, for me, says that Yuki Tsunoda's never going to get a Red Bull drive either. So is he potentially going to be, tempted by an Alpine drive? Would he go in alongside Pierre Gasly and go to a works team? There's a few options there for both of those drivers. Liam Lawson has obviously is in the equation still, and I think if one of those were to go, he'd be the obvious person to step in. But my question is, could both of them go? And therefore, we see a Lawson-Hadjar lineup next year. Chris, I'm going to come to you first for that.
So this is Hadjar and Lawson pairing up at the RB team.
It's a long shot.
Wow. I mean, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it, if that were to happen? Yeah, I mean, obviously Lawson, as you know, he's come out and said that Red Bull was where he wanted to go. He looked clearly disappointed. I think we all wanted to see him progressing through. I think he did fantastic when he got his shot to race in the car. It's a real shame that if he wasn't to be on the grid, I think Liam Lawson has proven himself when he got his opportunities last season, wasn't it? So it'd be a real shame not to see him on. And I think Isaac Hadjar in his second season is proving that he is ready to do this. He's been absolutely superb. So I think one of them has definitely got to be on the grid in some form. To see them both there, what a lineup that would be for RB, right? It would be a great lineup. I mean, seeing them go head to head would be fantastic. They'd make a great pairing. Isaac Hadjar is kind of win or bust, isn't he? At times, he's a really, really great character. Liam Lawson, I think, can carry the same characteristics. I don't know if we could see them both move in. So if we're going to see one of them, I'd go with Liam Lawson. I think he's waited his turn.
Score out of 10 for Isaac Hadjar being on the grid in 25?
I'll go for a 6. I don't know if the gap would open up for him, so I'm going to go for a 6 or maybe a 5, actually, because I just don't know if the gap's going to open up for him. I think it's not his time yet. As much as I'd love to see him there, I'll go for a 5, just because I don't know if the time will open up for him. But for Lawson, much higher, maybe. I think hopefully we could see him there. But this Sergio Perez staying on, I think, has halted both of their opportunities, and massively. If that hadn't happened, then I think we could have seen one or either of them on.
Harper, do you see Ricciardo or Tsunoda moving on and therefore paving the way for Lawson or Hadjar, or both?
It's a really bizarre situation, isn't it, for RB and the Red Bull Academy, because I don't think they want to promote any young driver into the Red Bull seat alongside Verstappen, because they've just been chewed up and spat out. Look at what happened to Gasly. Look at what happened to Albon. Yes, both of them have gone on to rebuild their careers. They brought Tsunoda in probably a year too soon, and now they've decided he's not good enough. Ricciardo is basically out the door now. It's now up to him whether he wants to stick around in the junior team, essentially. They'll call it the sister team. We all know it's the junior team. So, I mean, having Ricciardo in there to mentor a young driver at RB would be probably quite useful. I can see Tsunoda moving on. I think he has shown he's ready to sort of spread his wings and flee the nest now, whether he goes to Alpine or somewhere else on the grid, maybe Haas, maybe whatever Sauber are going to be called. I think there's another team somewhere that I'm forgetting that he could go to. So it's tricky because he's obviously Honda backed, but they're going to Aston Martin, and that's full up for 2026 as well. So where does Tsunoda go? Does he stick or does he twist? For Hadjar, I think he needs to win the F2 title to be in with a shot. So I'm scoring it at a 6 because he's doing very well at the moment, but that can easily go up with a win and go down with a not a podium finish. So every time that he does one of those, his rating will fluctuate like the stock market.
It's going to be a fluctuating score all year long, that one.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And then you've got to factor in, obviously, the other two drivers who I've just mentioned. Liam Lawson, really, he should have been in the car this year instead of Ricciardo. Yeah. And then they should have been looking at promoting Lawson alongside Verstappen. But this is Red Bull. When have they ever managed their drivers very well? Let's be honest. The one name that you might correct me if I'm wrong on this, is Ayumu Iwasa still a part of the Red Bull Academy? I know he's Honda backed, but obviously he's out in Super Formula at the moment. Where does he fall in all of this? Because he's shown that he was capable. He never got the shot in F1, but he challenged in Formula 2. So there are 4 drivers, there are 2 seats. Actually, sorry, 5 drivers, there are 2 seats. And where on earth do you fit them in? It's like we need another team, isn't it? I don't know where we find one of those.
There is a good
conversation.
Yeah.
We'll do another podcast on that. We're not going to go into that right now. Okay, so and sorry, Aaron, your score you said a 6 for Isaac Hadjaya.
A very, very flexible 6.
Nice, fluctuating 6. Love that. Good stuff. Our next driver, and potentially we're reaching a bit now, aren't we? But Zane Maloney, obviously that team, or the Sauber team, which he is a part of, he's part of their junior academy, and that is rebranding to Audi in the future. Thereafter, Carlos Sainz. They've already signed Nico Hülkenberg. What are your predictions? What do you think out of 10 the chance of Zane Maloney being in that seat next year, Aaron?
I think it's a 3 out of 10 because, first of all, you've got Théo Pourchaire in the way in the Sauber Academy. However, he's doing rather well out in the IndyCar series. So unless Audi put him in the Formula One seat, he could leave that academy altogether and say, well, I can make it out here by myself. He's racing for McLaren, interestingly.
Yeah.
So there could be a path back to Formula One for Théo Pourchaire if they were to lose a Lando Norris or an Oscar Piastri, although both of them are tied down to contracts that are as long as a piece of string. Zach Brown is a genius when it comes to contracts, it looks like. So for Zane, again, I think he needs to win the F2 title. I think he needs to be seriously challenging at the moment. His first 4 rounds of the season were very, very good. He didn't score in the feature race in Imola, and then Monaco was very tough for him, just the single point coming out of that weekend. But still a long way to go, and he's done the job so far in terms of building that consistency, building that confidence. And we saw in his F3 days that he can turn 3 wins on the bounce when the car's there for him. So he was very, very unfortunate to miss out on the F3 title that season. The ability's there, I'm just not sure the pathway is. I can see him being sort of a reserve driver next season. I think he'd do that role very well. But with Audi coming in, they're going to want a big name. They're probably going to miss out on Carlos Sainz. So who's the next big name that they go for?
Daniel Ricciardo.
Maybe Ricciardo. Maybe Sebastian Vettel.
But not Zane Maloney.
Sadly, not Zane Maloney. He's not a 4-time world champion in Formula One. But look, Zane is a very, very good driver. He's very quick. I think Audi are just going to want experience and someone with a big name who's going to bring the sponsors and do all the bits they need to get them up to speed as a Formula One team.
Yeah,
Zane's chance could come somewhere else, but it's a very, very fluid driver market.
Yeah.
Look, go on.
I completely agree. I think that he's just in the wrong place at the wrong time for Zane Maloney, and I think he would literally need to win almost every Formula 2 race from now until the end of this, every feature race to be in with a chance of getting that seat, unfortunately. Chris, your thoughts on Zane Maloney being in Formula 1 in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's quite slim, isn't it? I mean, they've got Nico Hülkenberg in, and yes, they're going to want some stability next to them. So obviously, they've got 2 drivers at the moment. It's likely they're both going to be out the cars next year, or that's at least what the rumours are. So they're going to want. There's a lot of drivers that are going to be looking for seats there. Do one of the drivers stay, or there's going to be drivers looking to stay on the grid. There's going to be drivers looking to get back in F1 in what is a very exciting time for the sport as well. So, I completely agree with what Aaron's saying. However, Sauber have a lot of faith in Zane Maloney. I think him going to that academy was actually a very clever decision for him. I think he went at a very good time in a way, because that academy is currently in a growing phase, and where a lot of other academies are quite stretched, and you're going to be kind of a small fish in a big pond. He's quite a big fish in the Sauber Academy now, so he's got a chance maybe further down the line if he stays there. And I know that they have a lot of faith in him, and they're very happy with what he's seeing. So if he can get his season back on track and have a really good season, then maybe he has a chance further down the line. And hey, he's the boy from Barbados, isn't he? He's a fantastic driver. As well as that, he's got a great career behind him, and he's performing really well in F2. And I think it'd be fantastic to see him on the grid. I just don't think that will be next year. So who knows? It could happen if he wins Formula 2, but a 3 or 4 for me.
Completely agree. 3 or 4. Nice. Okay. Let's move on then. The final driver that I've thrown into this equation is the championship leader, because it would be rude not to, really, wouldn't it? So Paul Aron, not with a junior team, interestingly. The only driver we've spoken about today who's not with a junior team. So he's kind of open to anyone, isn't he? Chris, do you think we could see him on the Formula 1 grid next year?
Sadly not. I mean, it's going to be one of those stories again, isn't it? It's another Felipe Drugovich, sadly. It's like a Nick de Vries again, Felipe Drugovich story.
If he wins the title.
Yes, if he wins the title. I'm speaking well ahead of myself there, aren't I? But I kind of think that's helped him this year. Paul Aron, of course, left Mercedes, and I think partly that was because they were promoting Kimi Antonelli into Formula 2, and they only really, I think, like to have one driver in each series. So they decided to drop Paul Aron. There was no other reason really to do it, because he was doing really well. He was always on the championship podium. He just never really won anything after completely dominating the karting scene and a lot of the drivers he's, funnily enough, racing against now. But he's always been super consistent. He broke a lot of records in FRECA. And so good to see him leading the championship now. But because he's not attached to an academy, he's kind of left out the conversation. And I think that is a whole nother debate and probably a whole nother show, isn't it? It just shows how important it is and why we have, I think there's 14 drivers on the grid currently attached to academies. So you can see why they all attach themselves onto one, because you get into FP1, you get 2 drivers went testing at Red Bull Ring this week, didn't they? And got out in the car. Paul Aron's not one of those. And no one, I don't think, apart from you guys and a few other, feeder series journalists, has mentioned his name once when speaking about him on build-up shows or anything like that. So, not that I've heard anyway. That's speaking from a personal experience. So 100%. His name is not being mentioned at all, which is a real shame. And if he's not to get in any conversation, that'd be a shame. But I hope he can go and win the championship and force the issue like Felipe Drugovich has done. And that's what Felipe Drugovich did very well. So I really hope he can do that for his own sake. I'm not taking a bias there at all.
He would be the first rookie champion since Oscar Piastri to go and win the championship on debut. Score out of 10, Chris, for Paul Aron being in Formula 1 next year?
It's going to be a 3. It's just not going to happen. Sadly for me, I don't think so. But hey, look, if he goes and wins the championship, he becomes quite he's got those ties to Mercedes, and he might be tempted to get back on that program. But people might start turning heads, and he might attach himself onto another program like we've seen the likes of Jack Crawford do and other drivers, and Zane Maloney. So, we might see him in a different F1 T-shirt halfway through the season at this rate.
I completely agree. Unfortunately, I think he's had a superb start to the season. I don't think he will win the championship. I think someone else will win the championship, and therefore I think we'll see him back in Formula 2 next season with another Formula 1 team attached to another Formula 1 team. And who knows, for 2026, maybe he'll have a good season next season and be on the grid in 2026. Aron, your score for Paul Aron being on the grid in 2025?
It's a 2 out of 10. Like Chris said, it's not going to happen. It would take such a weird reshuffling of everything that's already happened for it to happen. But the thing is, we know that Paul Aron has got talent because Mercedes don't pick up young drivers for no reason. At times, this might sound hypercritical of me, but the Red Bull Academy has just seemed bloated with so many drivers. I think last year we had 6 drivers sporting Red Bull liveries on the Formula 2 grid. And that's not even including on the F3 grid, where it was about the same amount. So for sponsorship, it's ramming it down your throats. It's great. But in terms of sticking your head above the parapet and getting that attention that you need as a young driver, not so great. Mercedes tend to only pick drivers who are really excelling. Look at the likes of George Russell. Paul Aron was excelling when they picked him up. Antonelli. These are really outstanding talents. And you can even go back as far and say Lewis Hamilton, because they did help fund some of his junior career way back when. So look at the talent that they have fostered. And it's really harsh that Paul Aron has been dropped. I don't think he did anything wrong. All he was guilty of was not winning enough, but it's a weird situation. It's motorsport. Yeah. People have been dropped for far less than that. So it's a shame for Paul Aron. It's just, I think he's driving now with a point to prove. There is that little sort of chip on his shoulder. I'm going to show you, this is what I can do. And like we saw it with Kushmani last year in F2. He hadn't really done that well in Formula 3 the year before. Turns up in F2 and suddenly he looks like a fantastic driver. Now he's being tutored by double world champion Mika Hakkinen. Paul Aron is driving the wheels off of that high tech and leading the way. He's not making mistakes. He's doing really well. He's now, because I've said that, going to absolutely stink the place out in Barcelona. But, he's done a fabulous job so far. I think he'll be back in F2 next season, like you say, Fraser, with another F1 academy. So sort of a watch this space. And if he goes on and wins F2 maybe next year, people will have to reassess their opinions on him. Or like Teo Pourchaire, Christian Lundgaard, Callum Ilott, go out to the States. There's always Formula E, which I know he's done some testing in. So there is a place somewhere for Paul Aron, and he will find it, and I'm sure he will be successful.
When he raced Formula E, he's fitted in very well. It's like elbow to elbow stuff, isn't it? And I think he got in the points, didn't he? I think so did Taylor Barnard. They were actually both very good in that. So that was really exciting to watch.
Absolutely, other avenues available other than Formula One, of course. That is all of our drivers we put forward then, chaps. Any other shout-outs? I know obviously we haven't spoken about Illumini, Felipe Drugovich, for example, Teo Pourchaire, we mentioned there, Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan. Are there any Illumini that you think will make it, or is there any current drivers on the grids? Obviously, Gabriel Bortoletto, potentially, Kushmani, anyone that you think has a chance of that we haven't mentioned of being in Formula One in 2025, Aron?
I've heard some rumours that Alpine are looking at Mick Schumacher. I mean, I'm not taking that particularly seriously. I don't think Mick Schumacher's coming back to Formula One. So, I have heard it mentioned. I don't think it's particularly credible. Drugovich, sadly, I don't see him getting on the F1 grid.
Such a shame.
God knows that Formula One could do with a Brazilian talent on the grid. I mean, it's crying out for one. Let's be honest. All the fanfare. Well, I say fanfare. All of the emotion from the Senna tributes over the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks just make you realise how important Brazil has been to motorsport. So it's great to see, obviously, Gabriele Bortoletto doing great things in Formula 2 at the moment as a reigning F3 champion. So perhaps he is the next Brazilian driver, but he's a McLaren junior. They're pretty locked in at the moment. So it's really, really tricky. It's such a busy grid. It goes back to my point earlier. We need another team. Notes on a postcard about where we can find one.
Yeah. The only one I'd mention is that I guess we could keep an eye on the fight. More to next year, the Williams Junior fight is an interesting one. Franco Colapinto, when he won, Argentina exploded, and when he signed that contract in Formula 2, it was like watching like NFL when they build up to a game, like the whole country's behind him. You've got Zach O'Sullivan just won Monaco, and there was big atmosphere over here for that, and then you've got the likes of Luke Browning coming through. So I think the race for when they will want Alex Albon, I think, to move on. That's an interesting one to watch as well. And then the Alpine juniors coming through, like Gabriele Mini, we might be looking a bit far ahead there. But and Kushmani, we got really exciting talent coming through. So there's some really exciting battles to watch. But I think the Williams Junior one is an exciting one to watch.
Completely agree. Chaps, thank you for that. Appreciate your time. That's what we think. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Let us know your scores on the doors as well. What do you think the likelihood is of some of those drivers we've mentioned making it to Formula One? Let us know. Get involved in the conversation on our social media channels as well. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.